pasan de noches y madrugadas llenas de hambre, siguen andando y navegando un mundo que cambia y sigue cambiando, navegando un mundo que cabe y sigue cambiando. Dos oruguitas paran al viento mientras se abrazan con sentimientos, siguen creciendo, no saben cuándo buscar algún rincón. El pulso sigue cambiando, inseparables son y el tiempo sigue cambiando. Ay, oruguitas, no se aguanten más, hay que crecer, hay parte volver, hacia adelante seguirás, viene milagros, viene cristalinas, hay que partir y construir su propio futuro. Ay, mariposas, no se aguanten más, hay que crecer y hay parte volver, hacia adelante seguirás, viene milagros, viene cristalinas, hay que partir y construir su propio futuro. Desorientadas en dos capullos, bien abrigadas con sueños nuevos, ya solo falta hacer lo necesario en el mundo que sigue cambiando, tomando sus paredes. Ahí viene nuestro milagro, nuestro milagro. Ay, mariposas, no se aguanten más, hay que crecer y aparte volver, hacia adelante seguirás, ya son milagros, rompiendo cristales, hay que volar, hay que encontrar su propio futuro. Ay, mariposas, no se aguanten más, hay que crecer y aparte volver, hacia adelante seguirás, ya son milagros, rompiendo cristales, hay que volar, hay que encontrar su propio futuro.
Thank you, Lisi and Rick. Good morning. Come, come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you're welcome here. You're welcome here, whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears. You are welcome here. No matter what you've experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, some of the time, none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. And good morning. My name is Brenda. My pronouns are she and her. I have a really, really close friend in the hospital having surgery right now. So please send, as usual, beautiful, positive energy out, and some will go to my friend, I know. Our worship team is Ash Rowan, who will be really being our minister today. So thanks, Ash. And our minister is having a day off. Grace Burns is our assistant for our religious education program and will be giving the story. We already heard Rick and Lisi Youngberg, and then we have Tara Briggs, and we have John Allen giving us beautiful music. Bob Scarborough is making sure we can all hear this back there in the booth. And Brian DeBink will be giving us his South Valley story. And he's also going to come up right now and give us the latest announcement from our COVID task force as we continue to move forward through this process.
Good morning, I am Brian Debink, and my pronouns are he and him. And as you might have noticed, I'm not wearing a mask today. I think I was told that there's still a sign on the door that says masks required. Masks are now optional. For service, this will include the big events. For small classrooms, we are comfortable here, even though there are many people, because there is good ventilation in this room. Smaller groups are smaller, but we still do encourage, as we can, keep windows open, good ventilation. That is always a good thing. We've become more aware that pathogens exist, and so there are great reasons to leave a mask on. So if you are more comfortable wearing a mask than not wearing a mask, highly, highly encourage N95 masks if you are concerned. That said, I want to give a couple of the rationale that the COVID task force used. This is in line with CDC guidance, which we know has been kind of theoretically, as has been popularized very all over the place, and hasn't necessarily always been well communicated, but they have striven to actually, reflect the actual data that is out there. There is strong evidence that wearing masks has not significantly affected the spread of the Omicron variant. Vaccines are still incredibly effective for keeping down mortality and hospitalizations from all coronavirus. The newer subvariant, I think it's called BA2, that you may have heard of, that is starting to come into the US. We are keeping an eye on this, although I believe Jordan had said that the current kind of initial data from Europe and other places suggests that it is also vaccines are highly effective in the same sort of way against that, and also previous infection is also highly effective in that same kind of way. And which would also suggest that wearing masks will also not be as effective. So those are the reasons. Like I said, if you want to wear a mask, please, 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 please do. If you do not want to wear a mask, that's fine too. And I think that everybody, can hopefully be comfortable with that. And if not, I am here. I don't know how long. Jordan and Shawnee are also on the committee. They'll be around after, and we can have a discussion. And frankly, if you want to come up to me and you're wearing a mask and you say, I would like you to put on a mask, I will personally happily do that, if that makes you more comfortable to have that discussion. So I think that's all I have to say about it. It's been a long, winding road, and I'm not going to say that we're not going to need to kind of go back again to putting on masks, because we just don't know, right? So just kind of trying to be as open as we can. I know lots of people have been really looking forward to that, but also setting expectations that, just like the CDC, we're going to be a little confusing here, and we may just need to step back. All right. Thank you.
And let's thank the COVID task force for 2 years of constantly looking. Yeah, okay. And if you're here for the first time, we want to extend a really warm welcome. We're glad you found us. And there's a lot of ways to get connected in this community. It's a very vibrant community. We have a website that has a lot of information. There's, if you did the, what's that code called? QR code when you came in. Then there's connection card for telling us who you are and if you want somebody to reach out to you. There's pastoral care available through our team and through our minister. And so please do, look for the committees that we have and just look at the things you might want to join in with. We have a wonderful religious exploration program. And the children will be going down after the story today. Grace will be taking them down, and we have teachers that work with them each week. And the Happenings newsletter is a wonderful way to know what's going on, and that's through email. One of the things that we've been doing is having food trucks that are run by local community and BIPOC folks, and just our way of supporting people who are trying to start small businesses. And so that's been out in our parking lot on Friday, Saturday, Sundays. Not tonight, because it's supposed to snow. Who knows? It's spring, right? So now it's going to snow. But next weekend, et cetera, moving forward. I had some of that food last weekend. It was amazing. So do make a point to come to that. And our community is going to make a trip on April 10th, Sunday, April 10th in the afternoon with Holiday United Church of Christ and First Unitarian Church. And we're going to go with the Friends of Great Salt Lake. And we're going to have an afternoon of public witness and song and silence as we honor this critical sanctuary and beautiful resource, as we know that it is threatened at this time. Let's sing. If you want to, stand as you're willing and able to sing, and then stay standing as we light our chalice after singing. And the song is Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
188. This is a round, so we'll go through this a few times and come in where the numbers are as you would like, and let's harmonize with each other. Stay standing while we light the chalice.
Let us light our chalice. You're already standing, which is great. And as we say our chalice lighting words, you are also welcome to use our actions along with that if you want. Those at home are invited to light a chalice of your own and share in this ritual by entering chalice is lit at and the name of your street in the chat box on Zoom. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Thank you. You may sit down. Good morning. My name is Ash Rowan. My pronouns are they, them, and he, him, and I'm excited to welcome you into the sanctuary this dreary morning, but hopefully we can get some rain, and that will be great. As we gather this morning, I do want to acknowledge that we do so gathering on this ancestral and current homelands of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. As Unitarian Universalists, we acknowledge the complex and violent history that resulted in the stealing of these lands and the cultural and physical genocide perpetuated against its peoples at the hands and policies of white colonial settlers. We commit ourselves to undoing these harms, and we seek to authentically and with honesty engage in the necessary work that will produce justice for those disenfranchised, and the work that promotes healing for the whole of the earth and all its peoples. Before we continue, I do want to explain that our service today has a little bit of a niche and nerdy underlying theme. You might have noticed the poster up here. So this past week was the national holiday Pi Day, which is an annual celebration of the constant numerical value pi. In 1988, physicist Larry Shaw chose the date 314 to represent the first 3 digits of pi, which also happens to be Albert Einstein's birthday. Go figure. Pi is a shorthand representation for the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. It's a number that is, mathematically speaking, transcendental, irrational, and infinite. Although researchers have calculated its value out to beyond 62 trillion decimal places, it is impossible to know in its entirety. And because it goes on forever, every possible number combination exists somewhere in pi. So your birthday, your phone number, your address are all somewhere encoded in that string. This chaotic construct is all around us. Since it appears organically within every circle, pi is an essential element, both in human construction and in natural engineering. It is encoded into the fabric and patterns of life itself. So with that in mind, let us move forward together into our worship. This call to worship comes from the Reverend Scott Taylor, and it's entitled, "We Light This Flame as an Act of Faith." We come with our doubts, worn out and worn down, wanting once again to trust, to believe that hope is not as fragile as it sometimes seems, that division is not as deep as it sometimes appears. And so we light this flame, the chalice, and the flame within each of us as an act of faith. A reminder, a redeclaration, a rekindling of the trust that darkness can't ever shut out the light, that kindness is more powerful than we know, that humility and accountability allow us to change, that together we can most certainly bend the arc of this beautiful universe toward justice. Now we have a story by Grace Burns for all ages.
Good morning. My name is Grace Burns. I'm the Religious Exploration Assistant. My pronouns are she, her. Before I get started into the children's story, I have a little bit of an announcement. So Rob Carlson is our Director of Religious Exploration, and he's not here today. So we're looking for one more adult volunteer to help with our kindergarten through 5th grade class today. We're going to make friendship bracelets. I see you raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Okay, perfect. So our story today is called Just Like Heaven, and it's written by Patrick McDonald. One day, Mooch sat under his favorite tree, and he took a nap, as cats often do. While he slept, a deep fog slowly crept in and covered everything. Mooch awoke. He looked left and saw nothing. He looked right and saw nothing. Up, down, all around, nothing. Mooch wondered where he was. Heaven, he thought? I must be in heaven. Mooch wasn't so sure what to do, so he just sat still. But after a while, he became curious and set out to explore. He felt cool dew on his little cat feet. He smelled a sweet perfume from the flowers and heard music in the air from the birds. Wow, thought Mooch, what a great place. He walked past the playground filled with children's laughter, and he walked past the town filled with all of his friendly neighbors. He paused at his own house, filled with the people he loved. So this is heaven, thought Mooch. Then Mooch came upon a big dog chained in a yard. The big dog growled, as unloved dogs often do, and it let out a big bark. In the past, Mooch would have gone all fuzzy with fear and ran away. But here and now, Mooch wondered, what would you do in heaven? So he opened up his arms and said, Hug time. And they did. Wow, thought Mooch, what a great place. Mooch continued exploring until he ended up back at his favorite tree. And he took another nap, as cats often do. Slowly, the fog lifted, and the sun shone through. Mooch awoke to find his best friend Earl sleeping under their favorite tree. Wow, thought Mooch, what a great place, just like heaven. Now I'd like to invite all of our youth to head downstairs through the back stairs for our RE classes.
This community, our church, and its many ministries are only made possible by the gifts that all of us give. Many of us pledge monthly to make sure that this space and the work we do continues. And it is also our practice at South Valley to take a Sunday worship service offering. And we always share those with an organization that shares our values in the community. For March and April, it is the Friends of Great Salt Lake. They do, since 1994, work that preserves and protects the Great Salt Lake ecosystem and increasing all of our awareness and appreciation of the lake, and do advocacy and research. They touch the lives of thousands of Utah children and youth through their Lakeshore Learning Program and summer camps, and they continue to have an issues forum with constructive dialogue about how we can save this great resource. So please give generously and join with me in our offering words. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
For all that we have received and all we have found the courage to give, may we be truly thankful. May these gifts be a blessing both to South Valley and to the Friends of Great Salt Lake. I'm going to invite Brian Debink back up to share an SVUUS story.
I've been asked to give my South Valley story this morning in hopes that you will make the decision to give even more money than you just gave during our offering. And if you haven't given during the offering yet, pull out your phone. There's a QR code in your hymnal. So my family moved to Salt Lake about a little less than 5 years ago, and we've been part of this community for a little over 4. We came to South Valley because we hadn't yet found our spiritual home in Utah. We stayed because of the fabulous RE program, which at that time was bustling with kids, and which our RE staff is very quickly, I can see, building that momentum back up. And that includes our paid staff and our volunteers who have been so remarkably resilient throughout. Right, our pandemic times. And also for the community that is truly living, I believe, UU values in the spirit of mutual respect, openness to others' ideas, and really and truly being as welcoming as possible. Although, of course, we always have more work we can do there. So that was 4 years, so 6 months with Reverend Patty, and I have a history of kicking ministers out the door right when I get there. And then 2 years of very intentionally disruptive time during interim. That's what interim is for, is to like kick us in the pants and make us uncomfortable and refigure out what we're all about, which I think that we did a really good job of as a community. And I just want to thank everybody for engaging that process who was here at the time and everybody since who has found us. And then the last 2 years of unintentionally disruptive, settled ministry with the fabulous, I've used that word a couple times now, Reverend Laura. And I'm sorry that she can't be here today because I have so much respect for her. And of course, so while UUs sort of by definition almost, and hopefully by definition, can be open to change as a defining feature, it's been a ride with y'all. And while I feel close to some of you, and I know many of you, I feel like we're just getting to know one another. But let me start from my earlier UU story. I have one. So my South Valley story actually starts with my Fox Valley story. Fox Valley Unitarian Universalist is in Appleton, Wisconsin. If you didn't already know, yes, I grew up UU, and actually in a church much like this one. Small church, lots of kids and families trying to live those UU values in a greater area that is much less religiously liberal or accepting. The local papers sometimes featured op-eds or letters decrying the UU cult on North Superior Street. Times changed. Those are the 80s. People were scared. I honestly can only imagine. I know that there are some of you who were UUs here in Salt Lake, and I can only imagine that there were similar stories from that time here. But this is my experience. So I grew up in that church, and as I became a youth, I had the opportunity to visit other UU congregations in our corner of the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, or not even Michigan, really, Minnesota, I meant to say, and Illinois, and got to see the diversity of thought and practice in our faith tradition. I even pulled many of my friends from school into our youth group, which felt so great, and was an absolute blast. Then, after the typical UU college blip, Michelle and I moved, my family, I meant to mention, my son is sick with not COVID today, and so the rest of my family is at home. which is also unfortunate because they really do, in fact, enjoy coming. So anyway, so Michelle and I moved to Ann Arbor and joined an already extremely large church. Just about 6 months after we got there, the longtime minister, much beloved, retired. So we spent over a decade in that church building lifelong friendships, having our 2 children dedicated in that community, along with unsurprising leadership and service sprinkled in. So that brings us to then moving out here. So that's my 3-minute slice of my UU life, which I'm not able to fully unpack and share with you. But what's important today is that the seeds that were planted in me by countless other UUs, who by sharing their gifts, perspectives, and values have pushed me here and have laid the groundwork for so many others. And so it's very hard for me, like going back to my church that I grew up in. There were so many people there who dedicated their time and their treasure and their talents to making that community. And I don't know what made them give those things. Passion to see youth grow up, dedication to values. Sorry. But that small church is now a very large church. And I don't know if that's the future of this church, but that was fueled by a brand new, first-time minister who was dedicated to being there for a very long time and growing that church up. And that is exactly what we have right now. I don't know how many times I've heard Reverend Laura say, "Hey, I've got my retirement plans here. Give me that 40-year contract, I'll sign it." So we are in a place right now, I think there's a lot of unease in society, and I'm sorry I'm rambling on here. There's a lot of unease in society over so many things, one of which is, I'm going to talk about money, inflation, right? And that affects everybody here. Your paycheck may or may not have gone up. You may have lost a job. You may be insecure. But it also affects the treasury of our community. And so I'm really asking everybody here, on the one hand, to give as much treasure as you feel comfortable, and then give a little bit more until it feels better. In no particular order here, I'm going to throw up this thing. I don't think we have more of these. I just printed this out at home. This is a UU guideline for giving. You know, I think the predominant religion would just say have a big 10%, right? So you're supposed to give 10%. 10% shows up down here in the transformer in the very high income bracket of $500,000, right? So there's a range from 2% to 10%, and this can be found on the UUA website. I've got a copy if you want to come look at it. We may be able to get more of them. I don't know. We'll figure out if people want this as a guideline. There's really a range of options, and it really starts from if you're brand new. Honestly, if you're brand new, don't feel compelled to give, right? We love having more people here and enjoying what we are providing and enriching our community. If you have been, if you have been here for a little bit, we would highly encourage both financial support, and I'll talk about it in a second, giving of your time. But anyway, so there's a range of money you can give. I know people don't like that, but if you just want to turn out your pockets and leave them on the floor, our ushers and Brenda and myself will come and pick it all up at the end, and then we'll talk about how we're going to sell those IDs on the black market. So the second part is your time. And I'm going to combine time and talent because really when you have a talent and you're passionate about that talent and that is your calling, that's what you're going to feel connected to. And our goal in this community, and actually the board just talked about this on Wednesday, it's to connect people with their passions and their callings. And that's going to be a big emphasis for this next year. As we've all been more removed, we've all been a little bit more separated from our communities in general, not just this one, reactivating everybody's energy to rebuild our community and build it up even bigger and build that beloved community. So with that, that's my South Valley story, and I will turn it back over to Ash and Brenda. And there are physical copies of our pledge and the pledge form. I guess we call it the 3T form: time, treasure, talent, and it lets us know how you can get connected, and people can follow up with you later. There's very specifically a digital version of that, and I believe it's also in our digital order of service, connected there somewhere. Anyway, talk to Scott. He is there in the second row. Talk to me afterwards, and we'll get you set up. All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Brian, for that overview of our pledge drive. And then we do have the big event coming up. I believe that's the first Saturday in April, and that kind of will conclude this whole pledge drive, so that's something to look forward to as well. Let's move now into the sharing of joys and sorrows. All gathered here today are invited to participate in our ritual of joys and sorrows. Those who are joining us in the virtual community are invited to use the chat box in the Zoom space to share your joys and sorrows. Our worship associate will gather and read those out from the pulpit after those gathered in the sanctuary have had an opportunity to approach the altar and place their stones. So for those who are gathered here in person, you are invited to approach the altar and place a stone in the water. Feel free to pause as you select your stone and gently place it in the water bowl. You are invited to practice this ritual in silence. John will share the gift of his music with us during this time. At the close of the ritual, when all who wish to have added their stone, we will add one final stone to represent those joys and sorrows, which are unexpressed but still held in kindness. Those gathered here in body may now begin to process up to the table. Please approach via the right aisle and return to your seat via the left aisle. Again, I'm going to place one final stone to represent all of those joys and sorrows which still linger in our hearts, which may not be voiced, but we still wish to acknowledge.
All right, Brenda had to take a phone call. I hope that is good news. Our reading today is entitled Notes from the First Few Days of 2020 by Mary Andrew. 1. I am washing my face before bed while a country is on fire. It feels dumb to wash my face, and dumb not to. It has never been this way, and it has always been this way. Someone has always clinked a cocktail glass in one hemisphere as someone loses a home in another, while someone falls in love in the same apartment building where someone grieves. The fact that suffering, mundanity, and beauty coincide is unbearable and remarkable. 4. I know we skipped 2 and 3, but that's what's in my script here. 4. I must choose despair. I must choose between despair and energy. I choose the latter. Keats. What does it look like to state in the mind of smoke? What does it look like to state in the midst of smoke, I choose energy? For starters, I choose to finish washing my face. Then I choose to look, not away, but toward. I choose to trust, first in goodness, then in people I know, then in people I'll never meet, always in myself. 5. I choose to eat less meat and dairy, even though, yes, there are zillions of other ways to help the planet, but that should never stop me from doing one thing, and I care about cows and koalas, and my cat, and the pigeons she watches. I choose to do the things that I think are too insignificant to matter, because sometimes protesting is an act of grieving, and small choices toward energy keep me from despair. 6. I choose to enjoy. I choose the new record. I choose to keep a $5 note in my pocket for someone who may need it. I choose to text a friend, I'm sending lots of love. And I choose to buy from Aboriginal-owned businesses. And I choose to show up at a birthday party because grief and celebration often happen in the same night.
When I was first beginning to plan for this sermon, I was delighted to discover that it coincided with one of my favorite minor holidays. The question I realized was going to be how to tie it in with an inspirational and spiritual message. Fortunately, as I mentioned earlier, pi is an irrational number, and it just so happens that one of my favorite authors, Madeleine L'Engle, wrote a book which is entitled The Irrational Season. Madeleine was a Christian Universalist. In fact, it's because of her controversial belief in redemption for every soul, along with her scientific approach to religion, that many Christian bookstores, schools, and libraries refused to carry her books. L'Engle's novel, A Wrinkle in Time, now holds the distinction of being one of the most frequently banned books in American literature. The Irrational Season is the third memoir in her Crosswicks Journal series and takes its name from a brief poem L'Engle wrote about Advent, which is called After Annunciation. The poem goes like this: "This is the irrational season, when love blooms bright and wild. Had Mary been filled with reason, there would be no room for the child." During March of 2021, author Jessica Kantrowitz wrote this reflection on that piece, which, for worse and for better, I still find very timely. I keep coming back to the irrational season, the book, the poem, and the phrase itself. I think Madeline used it to mean that God's ways are wild and different than ours. It was irrational of God to become incarnate in a young, unmarried, marginalized girl, and yet that is where the beauty and the power of the incarnation lie. But I keep thinking that this season, this endless pandemic, this terrifying political moment in the United States is a whole different kind of irrational season. Irrational as in meaningless, irrational as in reckless, destructive, irrational as in evil. It is irrational that there are clear, simple ways to prevent the spread of a deadly pandemic, and people still refuse to do them. It is irrational that public health is a political issue at all, irrational for a government to have the resources to help its citizens and choose not to. It is irrational that the poor and starving are pitted against each other, when it is the wealthy and powerful that hoard wealth and spend political capital to make themselves even wealthier. It is irrational that we do not love each other, when love is the only thing that will save us." End of quote. When the times we live in are as irrational as they are, some might say it's also irrational to have faith in something better, something higher. Is that true? Is faith irrational? That I word is often deployed in the midst of a heated argument. You are being so irrational. We might associate it with someone who refuses to face facts, a person who is being driven purely by strong emotions. And it's true that faith can be that way. I'm sure that we've all met someone or even been someone who's been so certain that something is true that no amount of reasoning will convince them or us otherwise. Zealous, unchecked belief can become dangerous. It can fuel conspiracy theories and devolve into paranoia and xenophobia. Or on the other hand, faith can manifest as a kind of willful ignorance, an insistence that everything will be just fine, in an overly naive denial of what is actually happening. The problem, however, doesn't lie in being idealistic or in holding strong convictions. These can actually be vital elements of a robust faith, if we also apply our rational thinking. Science has taught theology about the nature of truth, and to look at things as they really are, not merely how it wishes, hopes, guesses, or imagines them to be. When faced with the unknown, we cannot simply accept the assertions of authority or the majority as final fact. While revelation and belief can certainly play a role, common sense, study, research, reflective thinking, observation, and direct lived experiences must also be synthesized to build out our fullest possible understanding of the universe. And yet it's also possible to become so engrossed in logic and in reason that we lose sight of something bigger. And the very nature of something like hope means that it can't be measured, quantified, or proven, but that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. So what if we think of faith as something that's extra-rational, in the way that something might be extraordinary? What if faith is something that is rational and something more? In the second Time Quintet book, A Wind in the Door, Madeline L'Engle wrote this exchange between two characters. "With my intellect, I see cause for nothing but pessimism and even despair. But I can't settle for what my intellect tells me. That's not all of it. What else is there?" Mrs. Murray's voice was low and anguished. "There are still stars which move in ordered and beautiful rhythm. There are still people in this world who keep promises, even little ones, like your cooking stew over your Bunsen burner. You may be in the middle of an experiment, but you still remember to feed your family. That's enough to keep my heart optimistic, no matter how pessimistic my mind. And you and I have good enough minds to know how very limited and finite they really are. The naked intellect is an extraordinarily inaccurate instrument." End of quote. Although our intellects cannot be entirely discounted, faith also exists beyond the things we can logically comprehend. Sometimes we still should hold persistent and earnest belief in something that perhaps seems impossible. So in that sense, faith isn't only rational. It doesn't always make sense to imagine that things could be better than they are. Objectively speaking, there are a lot of awful things going on around us at all times. And even so, even with all the best information available to us, we can still choose to hope. And then we can let that hope move us forward with purpose. In her book, A Rock That Is Higher, Madeleine L'Engle said the following: "Our truest response to the irrationality of the world is to paint or sing or write, for only in such response do we find truth." I invite you to ponder with me on what things you have faith in. In the dark hours of your soul, what is a source of hope for you? What inspires you? What drives you to create artwork? What makes your heart sing? Think about that for just a moment. Since I'm still fairly new to Unitarian Universalism, I asked some other UU friends how they define their faith. Think again about your answers to those previous questions while I read these responses. From my first friend: "To me, faith means something that is deeply held and fueled by something at least a little bit beyond rational thought and argument. Not because the faith hasn't been approached with reason, but because reason isn't the purpose of your faith in the first place. It adds something into your life that isn't always fully describable or quantifiable, but it's something that you feel a connection with regardless." From my second friend: "To me, faith is the stuff that all my relationships are made of, the material that the interconnected web of life is made of. It's what my prayers are made of, and it's what makes me want to serve others as the principles tell me to. It's kind of like energy to me." From my third friend: "I personally understand faith to be an act of abiding in love. Faith never made sense to me when I thought of it as some kind of mental disposition or intellectual position. I've since come to understand faith as deeply embodied. For me now, faith is the spirituality expressed through living out the love of one's neighbor and one's siblings in this world." Much like pi, one of the best applications of faith is using it to draw circles. When love drives the fuel of our faith into action, we are brought into deeper, more meaningful relationship with ourselves, with the earth, and with our communities. If each one of us is a disparate point, faith can be the fabric that connects and interweaves between us. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put it, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And so when we find ourselves faltering individually, restoring faith can look like returning to the whole. We can be reminded that what we do and who we are does matter in a grander scheme, even in seemingly small moments and actions. It can be truly overwhelming to comprehend and to experience and to witness the constant injustices of this current moment. And there is also continual relief to be found in knowing that when we pull one thread in our own little corner, it tugs on every other intertwined thread in the tapestry. We are part of something. Everyone around us is part of that same something, and it matters. We matter. Here's another quote that I love from Madeleine: "I do not think that I will ever reach a stage when I will say, 'This is what I believe, finished.' What I believe is alive and open to growth." I find that so hopeful. There is always renewal. There is always restoration. There are always new things to discover and be inspired by. So to bring it all full circle, perhaps our faith can be like pi, infinite, beyond rational, and still well-rounded. May it be so, and may we have the courage to make it so. Now I invite you to stand with me as we sing our closing hymn, number 6.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life.
Please remain standing as you are willing in body, mind, or spirit, and join us in our actions as we extinguish our chalice. The words are in your order of service, and you are invited to say them out loud with me. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. We hold each other in our hearts until we meet again.
From Jessica Kantrowitz. In the meantime, dear ones, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Be gentle with yourselves and be gentle with each other. We might not be able to convince others to save us, but we can love each other as best we can. We can keep vigil for each other as best we can. We can stay present for ourselves and each other as best we can. And maybe we will find that we have created a new season of love, of perseverance, of interrelatedness, a season of a better kind of irrationality than the one we were given.
Still I know
Thank you for joining us in worship this morning. Please feel free to join us for our social hour here in Sanctuary now. Go in peace.